Ellie Dudley is the Australian's legal affairs correspondent and has been covering the trial every day. Ellie, we've got a big week coming up. I'm looking forward to the lip reader. Who is that going to be?
So we heard on Friday afternoon that we're going to be hearing from a lip reader. His name is Tim Reedy and he is from the UK. The court on Friday heard that he has been deaf since the age of 4 when he contracted meningitis. He has learnt to lip read, self-taught lip reader. And he now describes himself as a forensic lip reader. So he's helped out places like the UK's National Health Service. He's helped out the British tabloids. He helped investigate an extramarital affair by looking at CCTV footage. And so Network 10 have brought Mr Reedy in to analyse what Bruce Lehrmann was saying to Brittany Higgins in the CCTV footage that we've got from the Dock Hotel before the alleged rape occurred.
So he's the reason we know what Prince Harry and Catherine say to each other at funerals.
Must be. That's the role.
I'm loving his arrival. We've already heard a couple of mentions in court about what these lip reading analyses are going to be in the questions put to Bruce Lehrmann by counsel for Network 10. Bruce Lehrmann was asked, for example, if he said all hers about Brittany Higgins' drinks, if Brittany Higgins responded stop. How did Bruce Lehrmann seem when those things were being put to him? Did this seem like something that he was prepared for?
I don't think so. I don't think that he had been prepared for these questions to be put to him. Like, obviously, we can't know for sure. But he did seem quite shocked and he denied that the dialogue that Dr. Matt Collins was putting to him had occurred at all. Things like, as you say, him, putting a drink in front of Brittany Higgins and saying, drink that all now. Him saying, well done, when she did scull a drink, things like that, he denied to have saying.
Of course, Bruce Lehrmann had denied buying Brittany Higgins any drinks at all or having any role in her getting drunk. He had to admit that he had been wrong about those things in the witness box. How important do you think this lip reader evidence is going to be?
It's really interesting because I think it will be interesting to see what Justice Michael Lee takes from it. He's obviously allowed it into evidence after Bruce Lehrmann's legal team, opposed it and put up a bunch of things saying that his level of expertise isn't enough, saying that it's not scientific evidence, things like that. Justice Lee has allowed it in, but it will be interesting to see how much Justice Lee takes from it. He did say that ultimately the decision was his as to, him deciding the facts of the case in the end. So look, it will be interesting to see what this lip reader comes up with and how that impacts the case in the end.
I liked Michael Lee's reasoning for allowing in the lip reader evidence. Counsel for Lehrmann had tried to argue that this was not real science, that this is completely speculative, it's not proper evidence. What was Michael Lee's decision on that?
Well, he said that you need to remember that expert evidence isn't just scientific, it can come from lived experience as well. At one point when Bruce Lehrmann's barrister was, saying that it's not scientific and he doesn't have enough experience or something along those lines, Justice Lee interjected and said, well, he's been deaf since the age of 4. He's been lip reading since the age of 4. That sounds like experience to me. Clearly Justice Lee thinks that his experience is good enough to have this evidence tendered to the court.
Of course, what we can draw from the fact that Bruce Lehrmann's counsel is objecting to this evidence is that they don't think it's good for them.
No.
Was there... how hard do you think Steve Whybrow will go in trying to discredit the lip reader?
Quite hard, I think. One of the things that we heard when Lehrmann's barrister, it was one of his other barristers, Nick Olson, was arguing against the lip reader evidence being tendered to the court was he gave some examples of times where the lip reader had said sort of different variations of what somebody might have said in the CCTV footage. So, for example, there was a man in a polo shirt and he sort of gave 2 variations of what he had said, something like, this is right now, or this is for sex, something like that. There were 2 vastly different things that were said. So I think that Steve Whybrow will be latching on to those things and be saying, hey, you said it could be this, or it could be this, and try to discredit him that way.
On Friday, we heard from the police officer and a counsellor who were there when Brittany Higgins had her first real conversation with the Australian Federal Police's ACT policing unit. She'd initially first gone to police in Parliament House itself and they'd referred her to the cops who investigate sexual assaults. She went out to the Winchester Centre in Belconnen, the ACT's main policing office, And it sounded like she was seriously distressed at that interview, didn't it, from what the counsellor was saying?
Yeah, so the counsellor said that Brittany Higgins broke down, well, I think flooded with tears were the words that she used on multiple occasions during that police interview. One of those occasions was when she was informed of Bruce Lehrmann's rights as an alleged perpetrator. Things like, his right to silence. He can't be forced to talk. Things like that apparently just caused her to break down in tears. She also apparently broke down into tears when, she was discussing whether or not she would make a formal report. Something that this counsellor made really clear was that Brittany Higgins was really concerned about how making a formal report and, going down the line of talking to witnesses, having to talk to her bosses about it, all of those things, making it effectively quite public to an extent. She was very concerned about how that would affect her dream job and the job that she had been holding in Parliament House in Linda Reynolds' office.
The detective who was investigating the allegations, Sarah Harmon, in fact said that Brittany Higgins kept repeating the phrase that her job was replaceable, that her employment was replaceable. The lawyers sort of pressed her on exactly what was meant by that. And all she could say really was that it seemed that Brittany Higgins felt that she was expendable, that the election was coming, that she could easily be replaced. It wasn't clear whether she was implying that she felt she was going to get sacked for making this complaint, was it?
Yeah. And Detective Harmon did say, Brittany Higgins didn't explicitly say she was worried about getting fired. Whereas when Catherine Cripps, the rape counsellor, came through, she said, no, Brittany Higgins was very concerned about how reporting this formally would affect her employment.
The interview at the Colin Winchester Centre obviously had a big impact, because not long after that, Brittany Higgins emailed Sarah Harmon, the cop, and said, I withdraw, I don't want to go forward with this anymore. Sarah Harmon really made a lot of efforts to get her back on board, didn't she?
She said that she kept pressing her to get back on board. She said that one of Sarah Harmon's bosses, a senior detective, was quite concerned about the fact that Brittany Higgins had discontinued this. Now, Sarah Harmon did say that she wasn't too surprised about it, because through that period, Brittany Higgins had been indicating to her that she might pull out at some point, but clearly there were concerns about this young woman, discontinuing a complaint before seeing it through to fruition.
Brittany Higgins seemed to almost ghost Sarah Harmon. She stopped answering her calls, she didn't respond to messages, and Sarah Harmon had wanted her to obtain two really important pieces of evidence just in case she decided to go ahead with the complaint in the future. This is the dress and the details of the bar that they went to. Why were they so important, and what actually ended up happening?
Yeah, so I think they were referred to as perishable evidence. So things like the white dress that we've seen Brittany Higgins in from the night that she was allegedly raped, that she had stashed underneath her bed. And the details of the nightclub, the 88 MPH bar that we now know that she ended up at that night. Those two pieces of evidence are clearly incredibly important to this case. I understand that Detective Harmon wanted to see if she could obtain any CCTV footage from the 88 MPH bar. Then obviously, that dress, whether or not there was any evidence on that dress, would be really important to proving whether or not Brittany Higgins was raped by Bruce Lehrmann.
Brittany Higgins has said that the dress stayed under her bed in a bag, and that later she washed it and then re-wore it once and then threw it away. There had been contradictory evidence about that before. She had given different accounts at various times of what had happened to the dress. It's funny to cast your mind back, isn't it, and think if the dress had gone in as an exhibit, had been forensically tested, if they'd been able to obtain the CCTV from the karaoke bar, 88 MPH, we might not be here today.
And I imagine, if you're in Brittany Higgins' situation, and clearly she believes that she was raped, if she was in this position now and she looks back, I'm sure that she regrets some of those decisions that she made. The decision not to go to the doctor, the decision not to hand over that dress to police, the decision not to try and obtain CCTV footage from the nightclub that she was at, where people have said that, she was kissing Bruce Lehrmann that night. things like that. I'm sure that she's got quite great regrets about not going through with at this point.
Sarah Harmon, the cop, really seemed to not be surprised at all that a sexual assault complainant might change her mind about wanting to come forward and then maybe change her mind again.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's par for the course, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it seems quite consistent, I guess, as we progress as a society and we try to understand how victims of rape act. Obviously, this hasn't been proven. We don't know for sure that Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins in Parliament House, and he, vehemently denies those allegations. But we do know that rape victims don't always, follow all of the steps that you think should occur, going to the police, going to the doctor, reporting it immediately, blowing it up into something. So I think that was quite consistent with what Detective Harmon was saying, was that she was completely unsurprised that Brittany Higgins decided to discontinue this investigation.
We're entering week 3 of the trial now, and we've still got a lot of witnesses to go, haven't we, including Brittany Higgins' parents and her stepmother. Are we going to be done by Christmas?
Oh, who knows at this stage? I know the judge is very keen to get us done by Christmas, but what we really need to remember is that these are only the truth witnesses. Network 10 has 2 defences, as we've spoken about before. First being the defence of truth, the second being, the defence of qualified privilege, whether or not Network 10 made every reasonable effort to be fair to Bruce Lehrmann in their reporting. And so these are only the truth witnesses. These are only the ones who are speaking to whether or not Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins in Parliament House. We're still going to hear from a raft of journalists. Hopefully that'll start in the next week. People like Lisa Wilkinson, obviously, but also the project producer Angus Llewellyn. So yeah, that's still to come.
The case continues. Thanks for joining me.